We've covered a lot of short-lived states on this channel already. Revolutionary states, successor states, ethnic states, all that would try their hand at independence. And while most of them would end up falling due to bloodshed or a coup, rarely was post-war diplomacy the cause, and rarer yet was a request for unity being denied. But this nation is an exception. It is November the 12th of 1918, and the Republic of German Austria has been born. The Republic of German Austria was the first Austrian state proclaimed following World War I, previously being a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The long war, heavy human cost, food shortages, and other factors would breed a wave of both nationalism and revolution across Europe. October the 28th of 1918 would see the Czech National Council in Prague declare independence. A day later, the Kingdom of Croatia-Slovenia would issue a similar declaration in Zagreb, and the Hungarians in Budapest, led by Count Karolyi, separated themselves from the monarchy, and even in Vienna itself, thousands were in the streets calling for the formation of an Austrian republic. Talks had been in the works for weeks as to what to do in regards to governmental reform. Originally, changing the empire into a federation of states was proposed, but that came too late to stop the proclamations of independence. But it did, in a way, unite the German-speaking lands of Austria, all of which aimed to have a unified German nation of some sort. November the 11th would see Charles I, Emperor of Austria-Hungary, abdicate, the same day that an armistice was signed between the Entente and Germany. The following day, the National Assembly officially declared German Austria a republic, and named Social Democrat Karl Renner as Chancellor, passing a constitution which stated that the republic was, well, a republic, and that it was an integral part of Germany. Now, you may wonder why this clause was in the constitution. It was added due to not only the fact that there was a huge desire to have a unified German territory, something long awaited for centuries, but it was also viewed that the Austrian state, even with their maximum German holdings, would not be economically viable to stay independent, due to both the loss of territory from, as well as the lack of trading from their former imperial nations. Though the new nation had ultimately bitten off more than it could chew with its claimed land, as the government had little control of the further reaching lands outside of Vienna, such as within South Tyrol, where the Italians just marched in German Bohemia and the Sudetenland, where the Czechs just marched in, I wonder if that's going to be an issue in the future, and South Styrian, where the Slovenes, actually war between Austria and Slovenia happened. I'll cover that conflict eventually. They would hold elections in February of 1919, where only 25 out of the 38 German localities would ultimately vote, showing the lack of control that the government had outside of Vienna's sphere of influence. Nevertheless, a coalition assembly between the left Social Democrats and the more right-leaning Christian Socials would be established. Karl Renner would stay as Chancellor, and there would be a large amount of distrust between the Christian Socials and the SDP, as the latter were one of the main parties in the region that were advocates for Marxism, with Karl Renner actually being one of the largest names within the Austrian Marxist circles. While the SDP and Renner never attempted to seize power for themselves, this distrust would doom the nation to political infighting for decades to come. Talks with Germany about unification were still ongoing, and a telegram was sent to Woodrow Wilson, hoping that they could find an ally in him, as according to his 14-point plan, the will of the people in Austria was to join the German nation. The council post-election reaffirmed that Austria was a part of Germany, and talks would continue well into 1919. Though such hopes would be trashed, once the drafts for the Treaty of Saint-Germain saw that the Entente were unwilling for unification, so they would need to go their own way, and the treaty itself would be a major disappointment to the Austrian delegates, though they would have little choice but to sign the treaty. With Saint-Germain's signage on September the 10th, the lands of South Tyrol and Istria were ceded to Italy, South Steiermark to the Slovenes, and the Sudetenland, with over 3 million Germans, to Czechoslovakia. A plebiscite would be held on October the 10th of 1920 in South Carthaginian, which saw 60% of the public wanting to stay with the new Austrian Republic. Another section of territory, this time in western Hungary known as Burgenland, would hold a plebiscite in which the public voted to join the Austrians. Ultimately, the population of the state would go from 10 million down to less than 6.5. In regards to the unification of Austria and Germany, it was fully removed as a possibility, as both the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Saint-Germain forbid the unity of the two nations. The name of the nation changed from German Austria to simply Austria in the ratification of the Saint-Germain Treaty on October the 23rd of 1919, ending the last little bit of hope for unification. 19 years later, however, we would see Austria fall under German annexation via an event known as the Anschluss. If you'd like to learn a bit more about the 1938 Anschluss, click on the video here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it costs you nothing, and I wish you all the best.